Hello, Geelong, Canberra, Toowoomba and Brisbane. I'm coming to your town with my show about aliens, and you're gonna love it, so make sure you get tickets. Is America washed? Now that's a hook for a video. Beats our usual, oi, do you know who this is? People overseas? No? F*** you. I don't think there's many people, it was Stephen Curry by the way, not many people would disagree. We'll go into it in more detail later in the video, this is sort of a teaser for that, but 100 years ago, the US went from...
And there's Babe Ruth, the greatest American in our fine nation's history. Look at that little fat man run. Why, there's our beloved president, Calvin Coolidge, a man who rarely talks and everybody likes.
They went from that to, I'm watching the Super Bowl, but only for the ads. What? The cultural highlight of the year for Americans is to watch ads. I'm not one for buzzwords, but I think capitalism's gone too far. My girlfriend watching Taylor Swift is dating that damn football player, and we both watching to see Kendrick call Drake a pedophile. What is this society anymore? I don't know why I started with that. I think it was mostly to say the Super Bowl. So inferior to our normal bowls. This video is mostly about the protection money that we have to pay the US, which I just accept as a fact of life, frankly. However, I think we have a rare opportunity to weasel ourselves out of our medieval fealty oath that we have been in since our dark ages, 2019 to 2022. How was our Prime Minister Mr. Sneed from Peter Pan? Anyway, he shafted our original diesel submarine deal to sign a nuclear submarine deal with the Brits and the Yanks, known as AUKUS. Now, that sounds like a lovely thing to do, unless you're the most important country on Earth. France! With its iron grip over French Polynesia and New Caledonia. Oh no, we're surrounded, boys! The diesel deal was with them. Everyone was shocked by this snubbing of this huge, massive continental power from 200 years ago. I think who was most shocked by it? The French. But they were mostly shocked to discover that other cultures knew about cheating on their partners. Scott Morrison needed a real man. Boris Johnson. And Joe Biden was there as well. Well, actually, he got up on a stage with some TV screens that had the two of them on a Zoom call because that's how important this huge tithing of money we're giving to them is to them. And how much they appreciate us pissing off the EU to do it. Oh, yeah, no, it's jolly good. No, I am looking at it. It's bloody brilliant. I mean, remember this?
Thank you, Boris. And I want to thank that fellow down under. Thank you very much, pal. Appreciate it, Mr. Prime Minister.
He couldn't be bothered to learn our Prime Minister's name. That's how unimportant we are. I suppose we've got a big step up with Trump in office because he does remember Albo's name. He just doesn't want to see him. Oh. AUKUS set Australia, the UK and the US up with a security partnership that would see us acquire nuclear-powered submarines from the other two nations. Maybe. If there are any spare. Sort of a reverse beggar deal where the beggar pays money to hear someone say fuck off. But we'll definitely be contributing towards the development of a brand new type of nuclear submarine at the very least. So that's something. I think Scott Morrison fell for one of those timeshare scams, but instead of it being a condo, it's a doomsday device. I get to stay in it when it's in our port. But if we zoom out, the one thing that the Australian media and Twitch streamers have in common is they're both obsessed with subs. Everyone thinks Ludwig popularised the subathon. No, it was invented down under. This has been a decade and a half of fire content, yo. It all started back in the day when the Australian Navy lobbied the Rudd government and convinced them that Australia needed to modernise its submarine fleet to keep up with the rest of the region. Our old Collins-class subs, they were going to be hopelessly out of date by 2025. And we needed to start now, i.e. back then, so we wouldn't be left behind. Isn't that nuts though? We were supposed to have subs this year. That was the policy thread that led us to making a deal with the French government in 2016, but not before dogging the Japanese to get there. Yeah, we did that shit twice. Is it fucked that I'm kind of proud of that? Serial bigamist. Back then, our subs were reaching their use-by date. So, to counter that concern, the Yanks promised to give us some of their hand-me-downs, and they haven't arrived yet. But I'm sure the country that's so busy that they can't even meet with our Prime Minister hasn't forgotten that. So, why did we dog two friends that were actually keeping to their word? Well, I'm no expert, and that might explain why I'm not entirely clear as to exactly why we needed to dump our deal with the French. But I, like everyone suffering from the Dunning-Kruger effect, think that, no, it's the people that spend their entire lives thinking about this shit that are stupid. Permit me to explain. We already ruled out nuclear subs back in 2016. That's it. That's all I got. I don't know why that's changed. Has our sea geography? I wasn't informed about this. Cover up! I like the idea that we have the technology sharing agreement in AUKUS. That's nice. But is it $2.4 billion nice? That's how much we've poured into the deal with the French, which, think about that. That is about the same amount that Albo forked out to save South Australia's steel industry. Scott Morrison gave that amount to the French for nothing. Fuck, you really made the wrong choice in 2022, didn't you, Australia? Sure, the French deal hadn't been going smoothly. There were major hiccups, but enough to pull out? Like with everything. Fucking everything. Labor had the right idea in the first place, which was, let's get cheap, reliable Toyotas. The Liberals, I don't know why, said no, a much sturdier car is the Peugeot. And then Scott Morrison traded that in for a Dodge. Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk is a better deal maker than Scott Morrison because at least he got fucking beans in return and only traded a cow for them, not hundreds of billions of dollars. I don't know why we're dancing around the obvious. The reason we did this is because we're America's lackey and they told us to do it. That's it. We get it. I don't know why the press or anyone else needs to pretend that it's anything else. Remember, we're the country that when Biden couldn't remember Morrison's name, our response wasn't, oh, so disrespectful. It was, suck a dick. I honestly think it's cringy and pathetic that our media pretends, no, this is a partnership. We know what we are. We're Salacious B. Crumb, that little alien goblin on Jabba the Hutt. It's fine. Just be Buddhist about that shit and enjoy eating the frogs. And when the US goes on one of its patented bombing runs, we do this. That's our lauded life. That's why I also think it's equally cringy when Redditors exist, frankly, but you know how, like with everything, their viewers, why don't you just forget that any powerful interest or anyone else on earth exists for that matter and just do what I think is good? Flash what I read in a meme. Okay, but if they theoretically did, would you shut the fuck up then? No, I'll find something else to complain about because I'm mentally ill and have no friends. All right, maybe that last comment's a little too self-aware for a Redditor, but yes, keyboard warrior, we're aware. You're very brave. Online. But as our long history of Britain cooing premiers that stood up to them and then the US cooing prime ministers that stood up to them shows, America's Jabba the Hutt, Britain's that alien with the 2 cocks for hair, we're the little alien monkey that if he doesn't make Jabba laugh at least once a day, we get eaten. That's reality. I get it. I get that we have to pay protection money. In fact, it angers me greatly when anyone acts online like they'd be a big man if they were in charge and wouldn't pay the protection money. I also get, and I seriously do mean this, I think that both Tony Abbott and Malcolm Turnbull wouldn't have pulled out of the French deal. They probably would have had a plausible case and probably wouldn't have been expected to pull out. But I also get that now that ScoMo has, under normal circumstances, oh well, that's that. That's what you get for electing idiots, live with the consequences. But I do emphasize normal circumstances. I'm sorry to sound like everyone on Twitter, but these aren't normal circumstances. So I reckon we could weasel our way out. Because you have to understand, before the US, our previous master was the British, and much like now, we relied purely on the word of the British that if shit ever went down, her navy would protect us. I won't spoil the ending, but the British relied on using Singapore as a naval fortress that they could use to control the South China Sea. And the Australian government, as is our role, as a province in an empire, we got in line. But by the 1940s, the Australian government under John Curtin were realising that there were serious concerns about the condition of Singapore's naval base and the lack of British ships in the Pacific to defend us against the Japanese, and the British kept promising us that they'd send in more ships if anything actually happened. God, isn't it incredible how history repeats itself? But guess what happened next? The Japanese army steamrolled through Singapore in 1942 and took the Brits completely by surprise, and Curtin told the Brits that he was going to pull all Australian troops back to defend Australia. And get this, Winston Churchill went over Curtin's head and ordered Australian soldiers Curtin had recalled home to go and defend Myanmar instead. So, Curtin broke the golden rule. He told Winston Churchill to fuck off. Winston Churchill! Like if it were anyone else except Curtin. The nerve! He ordered the troops to come home again, and that was the first time in Australia's history that we told our overlord, no, get your own space bomb. My point is, I think we've got a similar moment, because have you noticed how the Yanks are treating their allies? They want to annex Canada, and I'll let that one slide. I understand the impulse because we have the same thing with New Zealand, and it's like, how are you not a state of Australia? Tasmania is. What the fuck's your excuse? They're talking about taking Greenland from Denmark, which, God, I hope that happens because America needs a win. At least, like, come on, Vietnam, Iraq, give them a W just to get their groove back. Trying to bully Panama into giving them the Panama Canal. The relationship with Europe has gotten so bad that the European Union is starting to think about creating a European army because they don't think that they can rely on the Yanks anymore. The times we can push back seem to be when the overlord is too busy with their own problems. And how can something be a problem if you don't know that the problem exists? No one answered that. He just found out that they have cancer this week. But you thought it was bad when Biden didn't know Scott Morrison's name. Trump doesn't know what AUKUS is. Surely we can quiet quit that shit. Especially when the US seems to be saying that they're not going to give us any subs. I feel like in that instance, you're not being pushy to ask for a refund. Especially still when the UK is also saying that the project is currently unachievable and needs rescoping and or its overall viability assessed. Have we been catfished? Like, we never saw these in person. When Paul Keating first said this,
only one is paying our bloke, Albo. The military have taken over the foreign policy. And as a consequence, we're not using diplomacy. I mean, let me just make this point. Running around the Pacific Islands with a lei around your neck handing out money, which is what Penny does, is not foreign policy. It's a consular task, fundamentally. Foreign policy is what you do with the great powers, what you do with China, what you do with the United States. This government, the Albanese government, does not employ foreign policy.
I thought, yeah, as usual, he's right, with the caveat that he was in power when America's biggest concern was Russia and now it's China, so they're going to be way more meddling in our affairs than they were in his time. But now, because of how the deal has panned out, I'm just back to, no, as usual, he's right about everything. You know that not only are we paying to fund the other country's submarine building capabilities, we're paying billions to extend the lifespan of our current submarines because they were meant to be getting replaced this decade. That was the whole point of this submarine deal. Now, some of our subs have, quote, serious corrosion problems. And in 2024, for the first time ever, half the sub fleet was out of service at the same time. It's essentially just rust defending this country at this point. I'd honestly take my chances with the guys that built the Titan over the current deal. So Albo, I know you're watching. Well, I know that your staffers are watching to see if you have to publicly distance yourself from me. And I probably would, because I'm about to drop a slur. You ready? Our generation has much to learn from your infinite Tory killing wisdom. But just this once, take a lesson from our generation. Quiet quid. I respect the fact that your generation just grins and bears things. You're definitely better people than we are. And that's all I wanted to say on the matter, really, just to dig at millennials and zoomers because I think that we suck, frankly. But what I'm saying is, this should be a moment where Australia gets out from under the weight of the US alliance and starts to be more of an independent nation, or, you know, finds another big brother to protect us. That security partnership that Albo cooked up recently was a good start. Let's just hope he takes it one step further and just joins the EU. We're already in Eurovision. Imagine how sick a Eurovision army would be. Plus it would piss off the Turks. What a payback for Gallipoli if we got into the EU before the Ottomans. You go down as the most patriotic prime minister of all time, Albo, scrapping a bum deal and then just giving it to the fez-wearing c***s. That's pretty much the only reason I have these views. I'm Balkan, so everything is just genetically seen through the lens of what triggers the Turks. Jam and Albo shirts on sale now.